us on high alert and help us to achieve our goals. Maybe you are planning for a proposal, you're planning for a date, something of the sort, or you have a new assignment as a leader in church, and you are wondering, how will I go about this? It gives you some level of anxiety, and that anxiety shows you your level of unworthiness and shows you how incapable that you are, and that anxiety pushes you to seek help from him who is able to help. And that is the owner of the work himself, Christ himself. Then we have distress, that is negative stress. It causes anxiety and pleasant feelings and decrease in performance. Examples: sometimes you have unreasonable lecturers. You know, you do exams, you are in third year, but you don't have marks in, you have so many missing units in your first year, and the window for doing those special exams has passed. You don't know how you're going to go about it. You are nearing graduation and you realize that your fourth year marks, 3-4 units are missing, and you don't make it to the graduation list, and the lecturer has disappeared. You know, you do an exam and you don't pass, or sometimes the demands that some lecturers put is too much. You feel like giving up. Sometime back when I was in school, there was a certain student who was a few years ahead of me, who in the medical school did, you know, medical school, you can do exams, one thing, but passing, making to the list is another thing. So this guy did exams, clinical exams. Once he failed, he was given a supplementary. The same lecturer found the same lecturer and he failed, and so he had to repeat. And when he repeated the whole year, he does the clinical exams again and he fails. He is now faced with a supplementary, and something happens, he doesn't do well in it, and the guy just decides to make it an end. He committed suicide, and that is how his life ended. And there are very many people who go through such kind of instances, but probably you have not reached the level where you want to commit suicide. But sometimes it gives you a sense of low self-worth. You don't see yourself as capable. You think yourself as useless, incapable, and many other things. And your self-esteem goes down, and you can't even push yourself to achieve more. And the people around you think that you are stupid or something of the sort. And these things can weigh so heavily on us, to the extent that if you don't have enough stamina, you may decide to take your life, as it happens in many instances. You know, you have loss of a loved one, you are broke and heartbroken at the same time. You wonder, how will life move from one level to another? You know, you don't have money, but you're also heartbroken. Your relationship not working. Those are some of the things that can give us distress. Being overwhelmed with the responsibilities. Sometimes you're a leader in church and you have 10 responsibilities. You are holding so many departments and so many committees that you don't even know how you're going to divide yourself. Those things can also push you and give you anxiety and unpleasant feelings, to the extent that you no longer enjoy doing God's work. Sometimes it even affects you academically. You don't do well in school because probably of overwhelming responsibilities. Or you are in choir, but you sing in 3-4 choirs. All of them are demanding. This choir is recording, the other one is doing a launch, the other one is going for an outreach, and the other one wants money for uniform and money for video shooting. And all of them have got demands upon you, and you look at your source of income is just small. You are not able to meet all that demand, and you wonder, how do I go about it? Those are things that sometimes can give us stress. And sometimes it's sickness, sometimes it is church hurt. You know, many of us are hurt in church, and we feel like giving up. Sometimes those people give up on God completely. We give up on Christ, we give up on church, and we just go. Some of these things can give us distress. Sometimes you failed exams. I think I've mentioned this. You've done your best, but you know, results come and you have failed. You have to repeat or take a supplementary, and you wonder, how will I begin from here? How will my parents take it? How will my siblings take it? Or how will, probably you are sponsored, how will my sponsor take it? And you don't know how you're going to handle it. And I've seen some students, you know, ending up committing suicide. You may have this person, maybe you are given school fees, and you've put all of it in SportPesa, Diamond, Yote, and you wonder, where the next school fees is going to come from. Probably you had 40,000 for school fees, and there was a bet that you put which would give you like 120,000, and it is around 1 month to or 2 weeks to exams, and you thought if you put that feel like I cannot bear all that, so you want to take your life or just become you disappear. Sometimes we have traumatic life experiences. For the ladies, sometimes you grew up and you are probably abused sexually as a child, or even for men, you are sodomized as a child, or you had some nasty experiences at home. Maybe you had abusive parents, or the home was not just functional, and these things weigh you down. And every time you get in the relationship doesn't work, you still think of how home has never worked, and you always blame yourself that you are not lucky or umelaniwa. Some of these things can give us stress. There are three components of stress. That is the stressor, the things that stressed you up, or the triggers, then how we process that information and how we perceive it, and then how we respond to it. That is our reaction or our response to the stress. Sometimes we respond physically, psychologically, and behaviorally. The physical is probably the flight and fight response, the rush of adrenaline and those kind of things. Behavioral responses, how we behave against the stressor. How do we cope? What are they? Do we have behavior change when we are going through difficult moments? Then we have emotional and physical behavioral signs of stress. A few of them I think I had mentioned as we were beginning, but emotional signs include being irritable, aggressive, impatient, or wound up. There are these who are easily wounded. You say something little and they blow it out of proportion. They are overburdened, they are anxious, they are nervous, afraid, neglected or lonely, they are depressed, they are uninterested in life, they have lost sense of humor, they have anhedonia, they are worried about health, they have this always impending sense of dread that something wrong is going to happen. Then you can have physical signs, which may include shallow breathing, hyperventilation, panic attacks. There are people who are even just brought to the hospital, and you do all investigations, all examinations, everything is normal. But when now you sit down with them in the absence of everyone else, in the absence of the siblings, the parents, and all the caretakers, and you dig down deep, you realize that there is a problem. I once handled a certain client who, was brought in the hospital unconscious, that she had collapsed. She was some middle-aged woman who was going through some difficult problems. She was a widow. And so when I saw her in the morning, and as I examined her, she was not talking, she was just mute, semi-conscious, but there is some little experience that when you've had, you're able to know that this is not physical, this could be psychological. So as I was examining her, I realized that this thing is beyond just collapsing. Someone collapses, you think of big things, probably they have got stroke or those kind of things. And after realizing that things is not as just physical as it is, I found a close relative, that is the Mkemwenza, whom I brought in Kando and investigated, not me, and interviewed deeply. And then I realized that this woman was going through a difficult moment. Her last-born son was arrested, and the people who seemingly arrested the last-born son wanted from her around 40,000 shillings, and she didn't know where she was going to get that 40,000 shillings. And so once I brought her up and we talked, and we realized that, it was not just physical illnesses, but it was mental illness. And after much counseling and therapy, the following day she was up, she was discharged. So sometimes mental anguish can manifest in physical realm, and somebody can even be admitted, not because they have a physical illness, but they have a mental problem that is now manifesting itself physically. You can have even blurring of vision, problems getting sleep, problems concentrating, headaches, chest pains, high blood pressure, indigestion, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, feeling sick, dizzy, fainting, and all those kind of things. Those are emotional, physical, and behavioral signs of stress. Behavioral signs include avoiding situations that are troubling, snapping of people, biting nails, unable to concentrate, overindulgence. Sometimes people get into alcoholism and smoking and all those kind of things. Feeling tearful, crying, restless. You can't sit down. You can't concentrate in class. Your grades are just going down. You no longer have interest in church and those kind of things. Then you have got intellectual signs like difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, errors, indecisiveness, negative perception of reality, disorganization. Someone just disorganized. They don't meet deadlines. They don't complete their assignments. They don't keep appointments. That is somebody you want to reach out to. Probably they're going through stress. And then the common causes, I think I have mentioned them as we have been going along. Now let's go to the last bit of this presentation. That is management strategies. Now, management strategies, there can be two major strategies. One is reactive or dysfunctional strategies. The reactive or dysfunctional strategies are the things that how we respond negatively to stressors. These strategies are usually not good, and how we respond to them make us to fall victims. Now, denial or negation is that you know the problem, you know that the problem is there, but you don't want to accept that the problem exists. For example, you're in a relationship that is toxic, you know the guy is abusive or the lady is abusive, but you deny, you don't want to accept that realities. That is negation or denial. Diversion or escape, you know the stress exists, but you run away from confronting it. You know probably the reason why your grades are going down is you don't spend more time studying, but you don't want to accept that, you want to run away from that. The other thing is avoidance or fleeing or isolation. You know the problem exists, but you avoid meeting it, although it will catch up with you. So you crawl away from the problem, hoping it will catch up with you. Then emotional release. You focus on negative emotions and expressions instead of finding a way to solve the problem. And sometimes this is projected on other people. You want to blame people for your misfortunes. You want to be a victim of circumstances. Now, we can respond or manage reactively, or we can be proactive. This is where you seek self-awareness. You want to manage your emotions, and you want to adopt a healthy lifestyle. I want us to look at it in the form of a tank. Think of a tank. Inside that tank is the reservoir, or your emotional capacity. Then this tank has got inlets, this tank has got outlets, and this tank has got overflow. The overflow channel, where if it overfills, when the tank is overfull, it overflows. Now, inlet are the stressors, the things that give you stress, the things that put you in difficult emotional circumstances. It could be finances, it could be lack of school fees, it could be family brokenness. It can be just you don't have money for rent, you don't have money for food, you don't have money to photocopy, you don't have money to pay for the exams. They can be modifiable. Those are things which we can change or we have control over, and non-modifiable, things which you don't have control over. And then outlets are the coping mechanisms. How do we, when the tank is filling, how do we get these things out? How do we handle them so that it doesn't overflow? And then overflow are the things we've been talking about, the negative effects of stress, the physical, behavioral, and emotional manifestations of stress. This is overflow is when now you say so-and-so is going through a lot. So-and-so is depressed. So-and-so is stress. The manifestations of the same, they will come as overflow. So overflow comes when our stressors, the balance between our stressors and our coping mechanism is not at equilibrium. That equilibrium is shifted, is tilted, so we have an overflow, and this overflow sometimes can lead to negative effects, and the worst is sometimes leading to even suicide or self-harm. Some of the things which we can do is, one, we need to recognize our sources of stress and how it affects us. This involves self-awareness. You need to know your limits. Knowing your limits help you to increase your tank size. Go back to that slide again. One of the ways, if the inlet is so much more than the outlet, to prevent the overflow, you have to increase the size of your reservoir. And you increase your tank size. The second thing is time management. Now, under time management, I mentioned things about responsibilities. You're overwhelmed with so many things that demand your attention. You need to schedule things in the order of priority. Identify the time that is available and start by establishing the time you want to do certain tasks. And then, for example, you have a whole semester to study a unit. You know that at the end of this semester, there will be examination. So instead of waiting until the last week, that is when you're looking for handouts for classes you never even attended. That is the time you're looking for, notes from friends. And that is the time you're looking for past papers or things, revision material, so that you have a whole week of stress. You can schedule your time. You know that you need 50 hours to be able to adequately prepare for this exam. Now you can distribute that 50 hours across the semester, and then you a little earlier, you would have saved you much trouble. Or you are simply disorganized, and so your lack of planning becomes other people's emergencies. That is the time when you want to, wanataka kusumbua rafiki ya kusaidia all ABCD, yet you did not just plan for it. So you need to schedule your time. The other thing is, you need to schedule essential actions. Look at the things which you must do, the things which are important and urgent, and the things which are important and less urgent, or the things which are not important and not urgent. You must not be a jack of all trades. You must not be everywhere. You must not be all over. Beware of the barrenness of a busy life. Then you need to schedule high priority activities and schedule contingency time. This is time for emergencies. Contingency time means eventualities can happen. You need to have some contingency plan. You need to prioritize important things. You need to learn to embrace the joy of missing out. Some of us can never miss out in anything. You want to attend all the launches that are available in your campus for all the choirs that can ever be formed, yet you are not able to handle that. You want to attend all the meetings, 10 committee meetings. You're a student, you need some time also to read. And so then your entire day, and I want to speak to people who are in leadership. I believe we have leaders inside here. Sometimes as leaders, you can be so busy working for the Lord until you even forget the Lord of that business. You can be so busy serving the master until you forget to find time to know the master that you are serving. You can be so busy doing things until you realize that you don't even have time for your own self. So it is important that we know how much is expected of us and what are the things which we must do. What are the things we can do through other people by delegation, and what are the things which we don't have to be engaged. With that, you're able to free some little time to be able also to develop your spiritual realm and also your academic circles. Don't bite what you cannot chew. Know your limits. Don't take too many responsibilities you can't handle. Identify the best time for your day and schedule important things for that time. Make a task list, a list of things to be accomplished per day, and arrange them in a way and on order of importance. There's a quotation in the book Christ Object Lessons 344 paragraph 1. You can go and read it. You can note it down. You'll go and read it. I don't have time to read that. The other thing is take breaks, be consistent and steady, and then have adequate rest. The other thing is consider addressing some of the stressors. Engage in meaningful activities, Find activities that can build you up spiritually, physically, and even emotionally. Accept things you cannot change or the things you have no control over. You see, the fact that you are raised up by a single parent is something you don't have any control over. And so there is no way you should let it be a burden to you. It may have its own challenges, but things like our background, things like our family, things like which other things? There are many things we have control over. So it's just identify the things you cannot have control over. I mentioned in the stress tank model that the modifiable factors. Address the modifiable factors, but the non-modifiable factors, accept the things you cannot change. Then develop emotional resilience. Find a balance in your life. Be organized and plan. Make time for your friends. We need to make time for our friends. People are going through a lot in school. Especially for leaders in church, instead of asking, sometimes we ask, oh, nani hayuko? Tujamwona 1 month, but no one has even bothered to take a phone and ask so and so, hey, we've not seen you for 1 month. What's up? Are you okay? Or just give a surprise visit. I remember there was a time in second year when I was going through some difficult moments, and we discussed a lot, and I realized that kumbe someone noticed that I was not around, and this person was concerned. And from that, I realized that no matter what happens, life is interest. Practice forgiveness. Now, on this matter of forgiveness, a lot hangs here. Mark chapter 11, verse 25. I won't read that. You can write it and go and read it. 24 and 25. But it says that if you don't forgive, then your Father in heaven will not forgive. Matthew 6:12 says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And if you read the span of inspiration, Christ Object Lesson, page 251, paragraph 4, it says that we are forgiven, not because we forgive, but as we forgive. Forgiveness is giving your right to revenge and hold up the offense. Forgiveness means more when it hurts the most. Sometimes we say, but God says, you forgive when it hurts the most. When the pain is too much, that is when forgiveness will more benefit you. Unforgiveness or anger and resentment is like drinking poison, expecting the person who offended you to die instead. Or picking a hot coal in your hands, you want to throw it to the person who offended you, you'll end up being burnt yourself. You need to learn, under forgiveness, we need to learn to debaggage. Most of us, some of our relationships are not working because of a lot of emotional baggage. You carried baggage from relationship A, and you didn't take time to forgive yourself and reconcile with yourself, and you go to relationship B with the same baggage, and this baggage hinders the progress of relationship B and it doesn't work, and then you go to relationship C with the same kind of baggage. We need to take time and reflect and look at the baggages that we hold in our hands and let those baggages go before we can form meaningful relationship with our friends and even with those that we love. Forgiveness goes to the undeserving. Forgiveness is a deliberate decision. They say time kills, but I want to disagree. Time heals nothing. Time aids the healing process. We have to make deliberate efforts to heal. Sometimes we say time heals because we just assume, we use the reactive methods. We avoid, deny, and bury our heads in the sand, hoping that that problem will go away. No. When it finds an appropriate trigger, those emptiness and wounds will be unearthed, and we shall realize that we have not healed. We are forgiven. It doesn't mean, when you forgive, it doesn't mean that you forget the hurt. It means that you remember the hurt, but in a different perspective. It will not change the fact that so-and-so had broke you, or so-and-so did something wrong to you, or so-and-so disappointed you. It's simply, when you remember that disappointment or hurt, you remember it not now with anger and resentment, but you may remember it with a heart that is free. Forgiveness is the fragrance that the rose sheds on the hill that crushed it. We need to speak life. We need to think and speak well of others. We need to avoid negative thoughts. We need to avoid backbiting and finger pointing and being victims of circumstances. Forgiveness does not justify the offense, or does it mean, or it doesn't make it to mean that the hurt was okay. Forgiveness means that you choose to let it go. Forgiveness means that the hurt may be too painful to remember, but remember that forgiveness is too beautiful to forget. Where we have a lot of stress and depression is we have a lot of unforgiven things. We have a lot of anger and resentment piling from childhood experiences to disappointments that we've had in life, and this thing pile up, and when it bursts, it becomes catastrophic. Remember, brothers and sisters, that a painful memory is a mental wound. Whenever we harbor a painful memory, it is a wound that we create in our minds, and that wound may affect all aspects of our life. Number J talks about think positively. Take responsibility. There's a book called The 85% Rule. I'll share with your elder. How to be accountable and responsible. Most of the things that happen to us, we are responsible for them. Sometimes we fail in exams, not because the exams is difficult, but simply we do not take time to prepare. Sometimes we have, broken relationships, not because our partner or the person was just hard to deal with, but simply we were not responsible enough. We need to take responsibility. For anything that happens to us, we need to ask ourselves, what part did I play in this thing? When you learn to take responsibility, we will realize that we have control over a lot of things that happen to us. But when you don't take responsibility, we'll always be blaming other people. And then you pile anger, resentment, and unforgiveness. And then lastly on that part is seek professional help. Seek professional help. There is nothing too difficult to talk about. When you reach a point, when you've reached the end of the rope, tie a knot and hang on it. When things are too difficult and you don't see how you can get a breakthrough, seek professional help. Seek a professional counselor, seek a medical professional. A problem half shared is half solved. Seek the pastoral counsel, seek the counsel of your patron, or someone elderly who can offer some meaningful counsel and advice. Brothers and sisters, there is nothing that we cannot talk about. Sometimes we reach the point of even wanting to commit suicide simply because we didn't share. We may realize that when you share it with someone has a solution. Or he may not have a direct solution, but he may know someone who may offer the same solution. So seek professional help. And I think we need to inculcate the habit of engaging professionals, especially on matters of mental health, when things are not working. Now, in conclusion, I've listed a couple of verses there. Romans 8:28, Psalms 119 verse 65, which is our theme text, says, "Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them." 2 Corinthians 12:9, Christ has given us no promise of help in bearing today the burdens of tomorrow. He says, "My grace is sufficient for thee." So the children of Israel were given manna every day. God's grace is bestowed daily for the day's need. When you wake up in the morning, ask God to give you grace for that particular day. Sometimes we worry too much about tomorrow when God has promised to give us grace daily. No matter what happens, I repeat, life is still beautiful. Christ says in John 14:27 that peace I live with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, let not your heart be troubled. Remember our opening statement? There is a longing that has been implanted in the heart of each and every one of us by a merciful God. And this God has put in our hearts to draw us to Him, that you may find fulfillment. The challenge is sometimes we find this fulfillment in the wrong places. We want to find this fulfillment in betting. We want to find this fulfillment in football. We want to find this fulfillment in relationships. We want to find this fulfillment in being busy in church. I'm not saying being busy in church is bad. It is important that you serve the Lord. But I've come to realize that sometimes we may be so busy and yet very empty. We may have a relationship with Jesus Christ that, He is Christ, but yet we have no connection with Him. The parents of Jesus were so busy until they lost Jesus in the temple. We can come to church, sing in the choir, have leadership responsibilities, do all the things that are needed for a good Christian, and yet still be empty. So we need, in the field of God, to blend the character of Martha and the character of Mary. As we serve the Lord, let us also spend time and build a relationship with the same Lord, so that we don't forget the Lord of business. In the book Ministry of Healing, please mute. In the book Ministry of Healing, I've mentioned that blessed disappointments. I want to read this statement. Maybe you can write it down and you go read it later. It says, our plans are not always God's plans. In the future life, the mysteries that here have annoyed and disappointed us will be made plain. We shall see that our seemingly unanswered prayers and disappointed hopes have been amongst our greatest blessings. One day you will realize that God allowed that relationship to break as a blessed disappointment. But while it hurts and you cry and you get depressed and leave church, if we can only look at things in the realm of heaven, then we shall realize that nothing takes God by surprise. That seemingly unanswered prayer, that seemingly disappointed hope, in the future life we will realize that some of them were among our greatest blessings. They were blessings in disguise. They were blessed disappointments. Pen of Inspiration says, our worry is blind and cannot discern the future, but Jesus sees the end from the beginning. In every difficulty, He has His way prepared to bring relief. That part in bold, our Heavenly Father has 1,000 ways to provide for us, of which we know nothing. Just remember, brothers and sisters, when life is at the edge, our Heavenly Father has 1,000 ways to provide, of which we know nothing. And if you give yourself to God to do His work, you have no need to be anxious for tomorrow. He whose servant you are knows the end from the beginning. The events of tomorrow, which are hidden from your view, are open to the eyes of Him who is omnipotent. And when we take into our hands the management of things which we have to do, and depend upon God, upon our own wisdom for success, we are taking a burden which God has not given us, and we are trying to bear it without His aid. One day alone is ours, and during this day we are to live for God. Let us learn to trust in God. Let us learn to have our faith founded on Him who alone is able to help. If you will seek the Lord and be converted every day, If you will of your own spiritual choice be free and joyous in God. Look at the points I've put in italics. Seeking the Lord, being converted daily, choosing your own will, your spiritual choice to be free, choosing to be joyous in God. If with gladsome consent of heart to his gracious call you come, wearing the yoke of Christ, the yoke of obedience and service, then she says in Thoughts from the Mount of Blessings, page 100, all your murmurings will be stilled. All your difficulties will be removed. All the perplexing problems that now confront you will be solved. And the songwriter says in 461, be still, my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief and pain. Live to thy God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend,